Okay, here we go with the building tutorial, the second part, part two. So I'm going to go over other joint types I haven't already covered and a couple other tools to use for building and more in depth into the edit undo system. But first I'm going to show you this one concept as to why I had to do it this way. So if these two blocks touch, or if anything touches, the hammer comes up, just like I showed you in the other tutorial. Now, it was similar in the original super contraption that it knew when things were touching, but the difference here is that this is 3D, so there's depth now, right? So this object's way far behind this object. So in super contraption, these would have effectively been touching and in the same place because there's no such thing as depth. Here there is depth. So what do you do if you want to connect these objects that are not actually touching? Well, like I showed you in the first tutorial about building, you could just create a shape, make it exactly this distance long, this length, and then, you know, everything would be touching and it would nail it in. But that is cumbersome. You might not want to have to do that. So if you want to nail some stuff that's far apart, you would open up this joint tools option and you can either rope wheel or nail stuff. So we'll go ahead and use the nail, and how this works is you basically click through all the objects you want to nail and it's going to drop a nail right where your click is. So if I come down here so that these corners are overlapping and I click right here, you can see it dropped a nail right through my click, okay? And I can hit play and these are now nailed together, and it was a fixed nail, so they're not going to move around. You can get all sloppy and weird with these nails. You know, it's going to be based on the angle that you click at, so you can add a whole bunch of nails. Effectively, the nails also don't have a weight principle, so this would just really lock these in. But you know, it's not super beautiful looking. And I'll also just really quickly show you the rotating version of this, and it's going to rotate. I would say perpendicular, I suppose, to the angle that you're viewing it, and I'll just show you what I mean. So I'll add another cube, scale it up over here a little bit, drop it right on top of there. Maybe I'll offset the angle a little bit. And then I'm going to add, so there's the block underneath here that you can see right there, and then there's the target block I'm going to click through. I'm going to add a wheel joint right there. Bam. So now this is going to be able to spin. The top one will be able to rotate freely. As you can see, it changed its angle there. And if I pick it up, it is able to spin, and yet they weren't touching. So that is that. Actually, you know, and I'll go ahead and show you the rope one too. Why not, since we're in here? So you click in the tools, you click the rope, you click the first point that you want the rope to be, say up in this corner, and then the second end of the rope I'm going to say is this corner, and then you can just get weird with it and add a rope from here to over here too. Perfect. This is just beautiful. And now when I hit play, you can see that the rope's maximum distance will be the initial distance, which means this rope will be able to get shorter than this, but it won't get any longer. So when you hit play, it's going to kind of keep it actually from rotating it in so much that how I put the rope there right now. Where'd you go? Somewhere I flew it up in the air. Let's say that happened to you and you wanted to find it. This thing just disappeared, even though I just found it right there. Another way to do that is to say item list. Go into the item list, and here's all the items you've added so far. It's just 3 cubes, because none of these joints and ropes are actual items. Go ahead and click the tube, and this familiar guy comes up here. Click that, click the magnifying glass, and now the camera's going to focus on that item. Okay, so that's those sorts of joints, and you know how you might use them. Maybe this thing I made here is like exactly the thing that you were trying to make, although probably not. Okay, so let's build a swing set. Yeah, swing set. It'll go really good with our really nice fence. Okay, so I'm going to start with the sort of triangle shaped mounts on the side, the 2 cylindrical poles that lean together to form the main mount. I don't know what you'd call that, but you might see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to scale all this stuff down. I want it to be a 4-meter tall thin pole. That's beautiful. I'll quickly add 4 poles. Don't want this video to be super long, so I'm just going to try to burn through some of this. And then I'm going to go ahead and, since I want the angle to be the specific angle I want, I'm going to come in here and say what I think x, right, 30, and then negative 30. And then I'm going to do the same for these guys over here, 30. And -30. Okay, now I'm going to snap these together using these handy dandy snaps. So these snaps, let's say they were too big or too small. Something about them was irritating me, the way they were looking at me. I don't know. So I can hit this gear here, and then you can go down to size of part snaps. You can make them much bigger, and you can see in the background they're getting bigger, or make them much smaller, depending. I kind of like them where they are there for now. Or you can go into joint tools and just get them the heck out of your way. But for this swing set, I think I'm going to use them. So I'm going to snap that in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this one, bring it over here, snap it in there. It remembers that this was still there, even though it moved the hammer to over here. And you can verify that by coming in here. See, there's a 2. So it says, oh, there's the first one, and then there's the new one. I'm going to join them both at the same time, confirm, to save some time. So I could, in theory, use the joint type I showed you in the beginning in which things are not touching to connect these two things. But that's not going to really be what I want in the case of a swing set, because you can't, once you use one of those nail joints, let's say I dropped a nail joint right through here, I can't hook other stuff to that nail joint. So what am I going to suspend the chair from that you swing in? And a swing set without the actual swing part is just a terrible waste of your space. But I'm going to go ahead and do both things so that I can show you the edit undo system. So let's say I did something I decided later I didn't want to have done. This is how you solve that problem. At a good stopping point, you're going to hit this plus sign, like right now. Bam. I just saved this whole slice of everything inside of that number 1. When I restart the application, all that's going to be gone. So it didn't save it to the disk, but it saved it to this number 1. Get out of here, you. So let's say now I'm going to experiment with coming over here, and I'm going to drop one of those joints. So I'm going to line everything up so that I can look right through what I want to hit. And I'm going to go ahead and add a nail joint. Cha-bam. And now I'm coming through, and I realize that this isn't an actual object, this nail joint, you know? It's not actually there. In the item list, there's still just the 4 cylinders. So this isn't a real object. It's just a nail. So I can't tie stuff to it. And now I'm infuriated because I have to start the whole project over because I didn't realize. But no, I don't. I can just hit the number 1 and go back to before I did that. Instead, we're just going to go ahead and add just another cylinder. Actually, yeah, 1 more cylinder. And instead of the maximum 4, we're going to go with 6. And here's the deal. You can type something here, as I said before, and override it. Sometimes you have to do it twice. It's going to say 4, but you can tell that the weight increased more than 4, and especially when you add it, it's definitely longer than 4. It's now 6. Here's why the sliders only go from 0.1 to 0.4, or from 0.1 to 4, because your phone is not going to enjoy dealing with a whole lot of really, really small things. Also, dealing with a whole lot of really, really big things. When it comes down to doing these physics calculations for just terribly small objects or terribly large objects, your phone's really going to just not like it at all. It's going to hate you for it. So I've kept it in the slider controls to between 0.1 and 4. I've decided that that's actually too tall, 6, so I'm going to just keep it at the actual 4. Should be fine. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, whoops, I didn't mean to add that second one, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So now I'm going to just turn this guy to the side, which I think is Z, yeah. And I'm going to move this kind of out of my way for a second so I can snap that in. And then I'm going to move this back so I can snap that in. And I'm just do all of them at once. Bam. So this is just looking really fancy, like a really fancy swing set. I'm going to go ahead and save it again. So now I'm going to work on the chair probably. Well, first I will add the person. So the first complex item is the simplest, which is the person right here. You go ahead. I'm adding this little dude so that I can tell proportionally if he's the right size for the swing set. And I guess, you know, most swing sets probably aren't angled out quite so much as this, and maybe they're taller or shorter. I don't know. I'll have to go, you know, hang on. I'm going to go swing on a swing set. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. This is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and add a chair for him. So first thing I'm going to do is add not the actual chair complex item, because there isn't a complex item called a chair, but I'm going to add this little wooden plank, which typically looks more like a swing set, except I don't think they're generally made out of wood. So if he were to stand on this little board, then he wouldn't know it's that I want it to be a chair. He would treat it like anything else. He would just stand on it or kick it or spit at it. If you want him to actually sit down, you have to add the second item that we're going to go over in the complex item, which is the chair. Here's the chair. It doesn't really look like a chair at the moment. I'll make it look like a chair at some point, I promise. But for now, I just have to, there's a whole lot of other stuff before I can start refining the art. Anyway, so this chair, I'm going to nail it down here using the items are touching hammer. I'm going to say add a joint, fixed joint, stick it right there. So what the chair does a few things. One, the guy walks up to it, and it'll give you the option for him to sit down. If he sits down, then first of all, visually, he's sitting, so that is more comfortable. Also, he's now glued to that chair, so he's not going to fall off. Additionally, the other important thing is this. You may have a whole lot of control buttons all over the screen for all of your vehicles and things, and it might be quite congested. So there's just too many custom buttons that you've put everywhere. What the chair can do is make it so that certain buttons only show up when the character is sitting on the chair. So let's say next to this tranquil swing set scene, I had several vehicles that I made kind of around the backyard or whatever, and each vehicle has custom control buttons for it. Well, if all those buttons were on the screen at one time, it would just be terrible nonsense, and we are a no-nonsense group here. So instead, he goes up and he sits in the chair, and the chair says, these are the controls I control, and then those particular controls show up. And I'm going to show you exactly about that in a minute. But first, we're going to put the actual swing set together, and then I'll add something to it, a propeller or a rocket or something. Okay, so this swing set, let's see, how do we want to do this? And again, a lot of this stuff is, I'm just showing you tools and how I'm doing it, but the point of this application is I'm trying to make it so you can do whatever you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple spheres out of steel, very small balls of metal, which I think would act as like an anchor for connecting the swing. So that's my guess anyway. Let's make sure for posterity these are both at the same height. 1.5. 1.5. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so now I could add rope joints, but that's what I'll do. Okay, I'm certain this won't work, but I'm going to show you. I saved everything again just now at the number 3, and let's go through again real quick. What was number 1? Number 1 was when I had done this. Number 2 was when I had added this piece. And number 3 was just now when I added the little balls. So I'm going to add rope joints. I'm going to connect rope joints from these little balls to the chair, but I suspect that the chair is too heavy and it's going to flip upside down. But we're going to do it anyway because what the heck, I saved it. So we can just go back to before. So I'm going to add a rope joint, and how the rope joint works, as I already showed you, is you're going to click the side of the little ball. You're going to click the corner where you want the rope to go, and then the same thing, the other side of the little ball, the other corner. And the same thing over here, get over here, and over here. Okay, then finally we're going to connect the balls themselves to the top. So right there. And so that's, you can see the metal spheres are what I was using as an anchor point. So I'm going to go ahead and save this also, even though I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. And let's see what happens when we hit play. We hit play, and yes, the chair flips upside down because it's too heavy. Why did that happen? Well, that's sort of a physics thing. It happened effectively because all these joints, every rope joint can rotate along every axis, so it allowed it to just flip upside down. How do we solve it? Well, we're going to go back in time to before I added the ropes, which was number 3. Because remember, the newest one was 4, and that's the ropes, which we've just realized isn't that great. Number 3, instead of the rope joints, we're going to do the same thing using joint tools, but I'm just going to add a nail, which can't rotate. So I'm going to come so that this ball is like right over this corner where I want it to be. So I'm basically going to imitate what the ropes were doing, but instead I'm going to use a nail. So I'm going to pop a nail right there. I'm going to line the ball up with that corner, pop a nail right there. And you can see how I'm just sort of manipulating the camera angle to put the joints where I want them. And it's possible that I'll implement other ways, because this isn't, what I just did was certainly not precise. And I know some of you are really, really into precision. And I'll be adding other things for that. So now that that won't flip, I think we can use rope joints. So I'll add a rope from here to there. And from there to there. Oh, whoops. I guess I didn't click up there. From there to there. Beautiful. Okay, so now if we hit play, everything freaks out for some reason because, I don't know, this might sometimes happen, and I think it's because the confusing rope joint I added over here, I accidentally added two rope joints to the same spot. Yeah, I can see it right there. Yeah, that's what's making it freak out. So I'm going to actually go back in time to before, and I'm just going to really quickly do that again, I think. Yes, because that double rope joint freaked it out. Yes, this is gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, so angle's a little off, but I don't care. I think it's really, really perfect. It reminds me of the quality of the swing sets that I swung around while I was growing up. Actually looks kind of just like them. Okay, so now if we hit play, hopefully it doesn't freak out and lose its mind. Yes, good. It did not freak out and lose its mind. So here's the swing here. Swinging around, you're having a great time, and if you get close to the chair, you can get in it. If you hit F, and now he's in the swing, and he's just having a blast. Okay, so let's do the final thing I was going to tell you about and show you about how we would set up the control button with this chair so that it controls something. So what do we want to do with this? Let's go into add items, complex items. We could add a propeller. That might be kind of fun. Could add a tire and a wheel controller, but I think I need a different tutorial to show you how those work. Let's go with just a rocket thruster. Rocket thruster, it's going to be 1 cubic meter, like most things are, which is kind of big. So we're going to bring it down to a 0.5 cubic meter. Hey, add it, you. We're going to bring it right back here behind the chair. We're going to rotate it. What would that be? Z, I want to say? No, of course not. X. Jeez. Jeez Louise. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to put it right around there. Snap it in. Nail it to the wooden part of the chair. Great. We are rolling. Let's go ahead and save everything here too, since we know the joint configuration is not going to freak out. Okay, so at this point, what we do is when we hit play, there's no way to control the rocket yet, right? We haven't yet set that part up. So let's say for all complex items, you can click on them and this little magnifying glass comes up. If you click on that, there's the familiar wrench, but there's also this glorious yellow and blue wrench, which is just, you're really compelled to click it. If a complex item such as a rocket has a wrench, a glorious yellow and blue one, you click it and a custom control will come up for this rocket thruster. Every complex item has its own sort of complex item menu. With a thruster, the only one thing you control is how many force, what the Newton meters are going to be, which is just a physics measurement of force. So we're going to bring it up to be pretty substantial. It's going to really knock them around. Set up the control button means, is there a button on the screen for this? And if so, where does it go? And yeah, there is. And we're going to tell you where it goes. Control name is going to be called Super Rocket Blast. Or let's just say, go. Yes. Do we want it to be a button or a toggle? Do we want to have to hold it down or do we want to have to click it? We want to have to hold it down. Now, the primary, choose button, primary 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, without getting too much into it, why I've done it this way is because if you're going to set up on a mobile device a control button and you're going to put it somewhere on the screen, this game is actually eventually going to be for PC, for mobile, and hopefully for the consoles as well. So that means you, the project creator, the project designer, the engineer, has to take a button and say, this is where I want it to be for a mobile device. And then you have to say, this is the keystroke I want it to be tied to for a computer device. And this is the button on an Xbox I want it to be. And here's the button on the PlayStation I want it to be. And there's just all these questions that you would have to answer, which seems like a lot of effort. So I've bundled all those things in groups of 4, and I'll probably add more eventually. So number 1 means it's going to be effectively your space bar. So if I add it here, it says space. Because I'm doing this recording on a computer, because my phone is terrible, it knows that this is a computer, so it's adding this little helper under here, hit space to make this go. When I load this same project on my phone, it's going to be that familiar mobile boxed edge thing. If I were to load it on an Xbox, it would be I think the A button. So this way, you don't have to answer every question for everywhere that this contraption will be played with. You just have to say which of the 4 or which of the 8 or however many. What this little guy is where he's going to anchor from. So some screens are different sizes, right? They're all different sizes. I'm learning now in the beta that everyone has a screen the size of your thumb or a screen the size of a giant TV screen. So to solve this, there's this anchor point. So now the anchor's up here. So that means it's going to anchor this far away from the top left corner. So if it's on a very big screen, it'll be way over but anchored from the different corner where the little yellow ball is or from the middle. So that is basically how that part works. I'm sorry it's complex. Maybe I'll think of a better way. I'm not sure. So if I hit confirm and I hit play, right away I can tell when I hit space, the rocket goes and then the swing is just having a great time. Space is also the button used to make the guy jump on a computer. So that's kind of a pain because they're both happening at the same time. So let's say I only want that to show up when I'm sitting in the chair. Well, that's the whole deal with the chair. You click on the chair, you click on this glorious yellow and blue button, and then you have the controls for the chair. The controls for the chair are set associated controls, like anything that has a switch on it. Set axis controllers. Axis controllers are like something like that has a degree of steering. So servos, motors, things like this that I'll get into in a later tutorial. But for now, axis controls. When you click this, it's going to take everything in the scene and make most of the things in the scene invisible, so you can sort of see through them a little bit. And it's going to take all the switches in the scene, anything that has a switch, like this rocket has a switch hanging off the side of it, and it's going to paint them either blue or yellow. Any blue switch, this chair controls. Any red switch, it doesn't. So we're going to click on any switch to toggle it. So I made it blue, now we are not controlling it, now we are controlling it. So if you had a lot of switches, you'd go around your scene, you'd make them all blue, or all the ones that you wanted to control. And then you'd say, awesome, I'm done. Now, what's going to happen is, the first time you load, the button's going to stay there, that's just a little glitch. But if you get in and out of the chair, that button's actually going to go away. So the button's not there anymore, and the button will only show up when you sit in the chair. So now I sit in the chair. Hey, get in there, you. All right, now I'm going to move the camera so that we're at a respectful angle. And just have a great time. Have a great time swinging. Do the full swing. Do it. Do it. It's just a little bit. Oh, there he goes. Wow, he's just a daredevil, this one.